Welcome to Chapter 7 of your business management textbook, which is about major planning decisions throughout the life of a small business. In this chapter, students will learn how key legal and government regulations affect the operations of a small business, major business planning throughout the life of a small business, and these factors contribute to that, including human and physical needs, financial planning and sources of finance, and marketing strategy. Now, with compliance with key legal and government regulations. Legal compliance must be considered both before starting a business and throughout the life of a business. Now, basically what compliance is, it's when a business reaches government standards. And as you can see at the image there, it has regulations and guidelines. And this basically sort of sums up what compliance is. So the regulations and guidelines of a business reaches to a standard that the government is satisfied with. And let's say if the regulations or guidelines do not reach a standard that the government is satisfied with, then they would need to in place new rules in order to reach to that standard. Now, you know how we as citizens have citizenships which allow us to do certain things and also not to do certain things. This also applies to businesses. And a business has something called a corporate citizenship, which is when an organization accepts the decisions made by stakeholders or people who are involved in the investment and shares of the business. So those who are involved in the investment and shares of the business have a say in the decisions of the business. Now, a business is also a subject to numerous and changing legal, ethical, and social responsibility. And I'm sure you've heard of these terms, but to remind you what social responsibility is, it's when an organization or government has a duty to society. And an example, and I'm sure you've heard of this example, is the McDonald's example. And people were becoming obese due to the food being served there, so they started serving healthier food. And McDonald's realized the social issue, so they implemented a new rule. Now, these legal, ethical, and social responsibility, if a business fails to take these to account, it may lead to legal prosecution, professional deregistration, and whatsoever. So it is vital for a business operator to comply with the relevant laws, regulations, licensing requirements, and codes of behavior of business registration. Business registration. The Business Names Act 1962 requires the registration of the names of all businesses that conduct business in Victoria under a business name. So that's quite clear. Basically, they have to conduct a business name. And under the Consumer Affairs of Victoria, it holds the Registry of Business Names. So a business name must be registered and the operator must display a sign showing the business name. And if any trademarks that the business wishes to have use of must also be registered as intellectual property. This is because it gives legal protection from others using your brand or business name. And once a company has been established, it must be registered with ASIC. So all of this business registration has got to do with the business being protected in order for so the business name or the brand doesn't get stolen. Local government bylaws. Local government's bylaws, now this is an important term, affect the operations of small businesses in the local area. And what bylaws are? They're basically when the local government places laws and regulations upon their local area. So the local government places bylaws, so laws that affect the operations of small businesses. And now, of course, this varies according to which local government it is. So that's basically what local government bylaws are, the laws that affect the small business operations that are placed by the local government. Building and planning controls. Every small business operator needs to approach their local council to make sure that their chosen location and premises is appropriately zoned. Now, every small business operator would approach their local council, and their local council will help them identify that if their chosen location and premises is appropriately zoned. Now, each local government has like a sort of scheme that is administered by a department and will help you identify either if your a location is appropriately zoned. On saying that, different areas are designated for different types of uses, such as larger areas will be designated for residential use only. Other areas are zoned light industrial, heavy industrial, retail, and commercial. The purpose of this system is to ensure that like businesses are restricted to similar areas. So this, you could say, is like a zoning system. And this zoning system prevents anything like this to occur. And this is actually on page 107 in your business management textbook. So this zoning system is linked to this image. Now, I will explain this further onwards. As you can see here, this house is in the middle of these two buildings, and if you were to think about it, it is not appropriately zoned. Now, this zoning system helps one to identify if their chosen location is appropriately zoned for their business. For instance, if you have a block of land next to your house and the next morning you wake up, you see there's a 5-store building there. You'll be wondering, what is this doing here? So this zoning system prevents anything like that to occur, like having a 5-store building next to a house, like as in you can see here. So that's the purpose of the system, to ensure that particular businesses or buildings are in particular location. It actually also depends on what business you have or what building you have as well, and this is why the zoning system is important, to have an appropriately zoned building or business in the right location. Other bylaws affecting businesses. Businesses must also be aware of other local bylaws, including parking restrictions, times of operation, health regulations covering hygiene and food handling, activities such as outdoor dining. Now, parking restrictions would be probably, where the area of parking should be and where not to park and to park. Times of operation, I guess, would be the timing of the operation. Health regulations covering hygiene and food handling. So there's laws onto how to handle food covering hygiene. So obviously it needs to be in a hygienically manner, making sure it's clean. And activities such as outdoor dining would be if a business does have outdoor dining, how that is meant to occur, and also you need to have the allowance of having outdoor dining. So these local bylaws affect each one of these in terms of having each one of these in your business. Occupational health and safety regulations. In Australia, employees have the right to a safe workplace, so this is why laws are implemented in order for employees to have a safe workplace, and that employers provide a workplace that is reduced of all physical, chemical, and behavioral hazards. Now, this is why all workplaces must have an OHS policy, or an occupational health and safety policy, being based on the input from those within the business. An employer's occupational health and safety obligations are commitment to a safe workplace covering all workplace activities, involve all in the department of an occupational health and safety policy to communicate the policy, provide training in all the relevant occupational health and safety processes, to regularly monitor compliance and review the policy. So to commitment to a safe workplace, so all those to be committed in the policy and the activities, and hopefully to fulfill them, involve all in the department, so involving all of them to communicate the policy, and how will this policy actually affect all within the business, provide training to provide training in order to fulfill the relevant processes of that policy, and to regularly monitor compliance and review the policy, to review the policy continuously and know what the policy actually wants the employer to do. Now, on saying that, there are actually inspectors that may be called in to actually see if there's any risks or hazards, and they do assess that. And if a hazard is too dangerous, the business may close down until they remove it. So this is why the small business operator therefore must obtain information on occupational health legislation and standards. Like some things they need to consider would be machinery, noise, chemicals, manual handling, and whatsoever. So each state government has its own laws and appropriate workers' compensation authority to oversee them. So occupational health and safety regulations are immensely important towards the employees in particular, but also the employers and the workplace in general. Employment laws. All businesses are subject to law and regulations affecting their employment staff. And what is included is superannuation, work compensation, employee relations, and whatsoever. Now, superannuation is a pension of payment made to workers. Now, superannuation is basically contributions on behalf of the employers to a regulated superannuation provider. So it's basically income that is given for retirement. Workers' compensation is payment to employees who are injured at work. Now, the purpose of this is to provide the employee and their families as well an income in the case of an injury, disability, or even death at some stages. Employee relations, of course, is basically the relationship between the employer and the employee, and both state and federal governments place relation laws. And these cover procedures for resolving disputes in the workplace and setting minimum wages and conditions. Now, minimum standards and conditions are known as awards. And what awards are? They're basically an agreement that sets out minimum terms and conditions of employment. Now, these awards are established by an independent type of industrial court, and this is known as Fair Work Australia. Now, Fair Work Australia acts like an industrial court, as mentioned, to resolve disputes and to establish minimum wages and conditions. It oversees and enforces things like the safety net of minimum wages and employment conditions, enterprise bargaining, industrial action, dispute resolution, termination of employment, and whatsoever. Moving on from that, employees and employers are engaged or encouraged to engage in negotiations on working conditions and whatsoever, and that is known as enterprise bargaining. And when they do these negotiations, they obviously come to an agreement, and that agreement is known as enterprise agreement, of course. Now, enterprise agreement is the formal agreement that results from the enterprise bargaining process, and the enterprise bargaining, to repeat what it was, it's direct negotiation of working conditions between an employer and its employees. So this enterprise agreement is stimulated for a certain period of time, and these agreements can either be between employer and its employees, or even trade unions can have a part in this. And so this is why it is vital for the small business operator to keep great consideration of each one of these enterprise bargaining, enterprise agreement, and Fair Work Australia. And not just that, like, of course, the superannuation, compensation, and all of that, because all of these are important employment laws. equal opportunity, anti-discrimination, and sexual harassment legislation. Numerous pieces of state and federal legislation regulate the relationship between employers and employees towards each other. Now, the aim or purpose of this is to ensure that employees are judged by their employers in a particular manner. Now, legislation relates to three main areas: anti-discrimination, affirmative action laws, and federal sexual harassment legislation. Now, anti-discrimination, that aims to prevent employees from discrimination on the grounds of race, gender, sexual preference, religion, ethnic background, disability, or any personal characteristic. The employers are also liable for the actions of their employees. So, just to make this clear for all three of them, not only is the employer liable for how they treat their employees, but also the employees, how they treat other employees, is also taken account into this. Now to affirmative action laws. This basically aims to improve the chances for career advancement for those groups that have traditionally been disadvantaged, such as women and those ethnic background groups, you could say Aboriginals. Federal sexual harassment legislation. So this is basically uninvited sexual behavior that is offensive, embarrassing, or humiliating in the workplace, either by the employers to workers or between the workers. So legislation is created in order for employers to treat their employees in a manner that is respectful, of course, and also how employees treat other employees within the workplace. State government laws regulate trading hours. Different types of businesses will have different trading hours allowed. The type of business and the locality issue are taken into consideration when trading hours are determined. Also, small businesses need to be aware with the changes to public holidays and the trading hours allowed by laws on these days. Now, trading hours are regulated depending on the type of business and the locality issue. And that's how the trading hours are determined and taken into consideration. Now, different business type of businesses have different trading hours allowed, and as I said, it depends on the type of business and the locality issue. But also, small business operators need to be aware of the changes to public holidays in regard to their trading hours allowed by law on these days. Environmental protection laws. Environment protection laws are enacted by governments at all levels. So environmental protection laws are enacted by governments at all levels, either being state, federal, or local. A business operator is required to take into consideration with the relevant environmental legislation, ensuring that the business meets expected standards. So what this basically means that a business operator is required to take into account relevant environmental laws, ensuring that the business actually adapts these and meets the expected standards. The Environmental Protection Authority, also known as EPA, enforce environmental laws covering noise, waste discharge, use of toxic substances, emission into the environment. Now, if a business does not reach, as I said, to relevant standards, expected standards, then the business may be prosecuted if it fails. Now, this is why environmental protection laws are highly important, because a business may be prosecuted if these laws are not taken into consideration.
Consumer protection laws. Numerous pieces of laws have been enacted by both state and federal governments with the intention of protecting consumers from unfair business practices. Each state has a Sale of Goods Act outlining the rights and duties of buyers and sellers. Goods sold must correspond with their description, be suited to the purpose for which they are sold, be consistent from a sample to the full quantity. The Federal Competition and Consumer Act 2010 aims to encourage fair trading practices. It prohibits any misleading or deceptive conduct in trade. A small business operator will need to be aware of laws relating to weights and measures, mail regulations, pricing, packaging, labeling, refunds, and exchanges. Privacy. Privacy Act 1988 is about how a business should handle the use of personal information about people. This basically means that all businesses must always inform people that such and such information is being collected from him or her. The information should only be used for a specific and reasonable purpose. Many businesses in Australia use this privacy policy, keeping in mind that businesses concerned must always inform people that such information is being collected from her or him. The information should only be used for a specific and reasonable purpose. See, it's private, so you can't throw it out. Taxation. All businesses must pay tax. They will also need to contact the ATO, which is the Australian Taxation Office. They will need to contact the ATO for many reasons. These include the ABN, the tax file number of goods and services, the BAS, and GST. So ABN is the Australian businesses must obtain a business number, which is the ABN. The ABN is a legal requirement for businesses in Australia. Tax file number. Business partnerships and companies require their own tax file number. Businesses are required to collect goods and services tax from their sales. A business activity statement, which is BAS, must be submitted periodically to advise the ATO and remit tax due on income earned during the period, plus a GST and employee income tax earned. And taxation could sometimes become overloaded and very stressful. Insurance. Unlike taxation, insurance is a good thing. All businesses need some sort of an insurance. Business operators should fully be aware of the risks involved in running the business and take out insurance accordingly. Well, this is known as risk assessment. Also, insurance policies should be changed and updated as the business grows. An insurance policy is a legal contract that's designed to give financial support in the event of a disaster. So, for example, if you have a car crash, you wouldn't need to pay for the costs because your insurance will be there for you to pay for all of that. This is called conducting a risk assessment. So, how does this all work? An insurance policy works by the insured client paying a sum of money, which is the premium, to an insurer, and in return, the insurer guarantees to financially support the client if any accidental losses occur. So there are two types of insurances that are compulsory and must be purchased by all businesses in Australia. They include workers' compensation and motor vehicle third party. To know the definitions of them too, refer to page 115 of your textbook. And some of the examples of insurance are Allianz Insurance, Youi, and the Meerkat Insurance. Storage of dangerous goods and chemicals. This is developed to protect employees and the community at large. A business may be prosecuted if found to store dangerous substances or goods in inappropriate manner. Business licenses, permits, and approvals. Most businesses require some sort of a license, permit, or approvals from a government authority to operate. Licenses grant the right to perform a specified activity or role. A license is issued for a specific period of time and must be reapplied for once this period has elapsed. Some businesses may have registrations or a license from a specified body or organizations, and others require a variety of licenses. Codes of practice. Codes of practice are sets of guidelines established by internal bodies to regulate the standards of behavior and conduct within an industry. Code of conduct are guidelines to regulate standards of behavior and conduct either within an organization or within an industry. Code of practice are also known as code of ethics, code of conduct, good practice, professional conduct, standards, rules, or specifications. Self-regulation. Self-regulation is a group or industry regulates its own conduct and behavior. Often, an industry code of practice is used by an industry as a form of self-regulation.
Human and physical needs of a business. Planning must be a continuous process in order to ensure the future human and physical resource requirements of the business are met. Accurate provision of physical resources are required if a business is to provide quality products in an efficient manner and therefore remain competitive. Different businesses have different resource requirements. This may change if the business expands into new markets or diversifies its products. For example, Bunnings Warehouse has different requirements compared to Myers. Meeting the physical resource requirements of a business is an ongoing cycle involving sourcing and either purchasing or leasing the required resources such as raw materials, equipment, building, and labors. Negotiation of leasing or purchase arrangements. Maintaining supplies and a relationship with suppliers. Making arrangements for servicing and maintenance of equipment and other capital items. This may involve contracts with service providers or establishing maintenance procedures. Replacement of resources when they reach the end of the cycle, example, vehicles or IT equipment and software. Ongoing costs of maintaining resources and sourcing new ones must be taken into account. A delivery van, for example, will involve more than the initial cost of purchase. Ongoing operating costs such as servicing, patrol, and replacement parts such as tires must also be budgeted for. Workforce planning. Workforce planning is planning undertaken to forecast the supply of the demand for workers. Workforce planning is carried out to attract and maintain a constant supply for workers to keep the business operating. This involves forecasting the likely future demand for employees and taking steps to ensure that this demand is met. This may involve establishing and maintaining a relationship with the employment agency and supplies temporary workers. It also requires the development of policies and procedures to employ staff with appropriate skills and qualifications, train staff, motivate staff, deal with seasonal variation in employment requirements, example, employing more staff often as casuals during business periods, monitor staff turnover and assess reasons for staff leaving. Financial planning. Initial and ongoing financial planning is important. An owner must plan to meet the initial establishment cost, both startups and purchase of large capital items such as vehicles or machinery, as well as the cost of keeping the business operating day to day. In addition, planning to meet future anticipated costs, such as rises in the price of inputs or meeting plans for business expansions or diversification, must be taken. The need for business finance. Business failures can often be caused by the lack of financial planning and control. Effective financial management is essential for the successful daily running of a business and is long-term prosperity. Businesses have to consider a number of factors when deciding between alternative sources of finance. Purpose of the finance is it for the day-to-day running of the business or for the purchase of assets such as equipment. Amount required. If it is just for the short term, an overdraft might be sufficient. Time period the money is needed. For example, is the money needed for a large purchase such as a new business premises? Costs associated with the loan. The interest rate on the loan as well as the recurring administration costs have to be considered. Financial situation of the business. A business with a poor cash flow might find it difficult to borrow money as it represents a higher risk to the lender. External factors. Factors beyond the control of the business, such as the global economy, affect the availability of money. Rising finance. There are three sources of finance available to business operators that can be used to meet startup costs. Now, startup costs or expenses associated with establishing a new businesses may include registration of a company name, legal costs, buying fixtures and fitting in major assets such as buildings. Rising finance. Contribute by the business's owner. Reserve profit that are invested back to the business. 2. Borrowed or invested funds from lending institutions, other investors such as business angel or ventures capitalists, or from family or friends. Planning and marketing strategy. A small business owner must plan the initial ongoing strategies to market the business and its products or services. A marketing plan details how customers, clients will be attracted to the business and how they will be maintained over time. This plan must be reviewed and reassessed regularly in light of changes in the market. The small businesses operator must determine and specify 1. Businesses or objectives, who their customers are, what their customers want, basically their needs and wants, why customer will buy from them and not from the competitive objectives. Market research. The first step in marketing is a business is to conduct market research. This is a process of gathering information about the market through a number of measures, including discussions with others in the same industry and potential customers and suppliers. 2. Employment a market research company to conduct research. 3. The internet. 4. Trade and industry associated research. 5. Australian Bureau of Statistics research. Much of this is free. 6. Products. What benefits do they bring to the consumer? 7. Target market. What group of consumers is likely to buy the product and what is their demographic? And the last one, competitors. Who are they and what are their strengths and weaknesses? Marketing plan. After market research has been done, the business operator needs to draw up a marketing plan for the business. This will include goals and marketing strategies. Refer to chapter 17 and 18. The marketing plan must be reviewed and reevaluated regularly to follow up and react to changing trends in the market and to keep up to date with the latest market research statistics. So you want to keep an eye on them. So guys, that was chapter 7's chapter summary. So we're just going to go through it once more. Planning continues throughout the life of a small businesses. A business must plan for compliance with legal and government regulations such as business registration, local government bylaws, occupational health and safety, employment laws, equal opportunity, environmental laws, consumers protection, taxation, insurance, codes of practice.
Okay, also human and physical resource needs, which can include sourcing and leasing purchase of equipment, raw materials, and so on, to meet ongoing requirements including seasonal variations and expansion, negotiation of leases and purchase of premises, maintaining relationship with reliable suppliers, servicing and maintenance of equipment, replacement of resources when required, workforce planning conducted to attract and maintain a supply of workers, and involving forecasting and planning to meet future requirements.
Financial needs to meet both ongoing initial costs and the need for raising finance. And the last one, marketing strategy to attract, maintain, and grow customer client base also involves market research to define products, target market, and main competitors. So guys, that was chapter 7. If you like this video by
Please
Sarah
subscribe.
Ahmed Yar, Arza Saidi, and me, Rafi Haq, please subscribe, give us a like, and share this video. And we just finished chapter 7. Woohoo!